Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the August 9th, 2021 regular school board meeting. Before we begin the work of the district, let us stand for a moment of silence, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hey, Superintendent.
Good evening. Welcome everyone here tonight. We're going to start with the approval of the minutes from the special school board meeting and public hearing for the tentative budget on July 26, 2021. I'm asking for your approval and also for the executive session for collective bargaining, July 26, 2021, and the regular school board meeting, July 26, 2021.
You've heard the superintendent's recommendation. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? 5-0. Representation. Mrs. Owens.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, board members, superintendent. Today's district spotlight video is a way to give parents a brief overview of the safety measures that we have taken in our schools without them having to go page by page throughout our safety protocols document to find some of the answers to some of the questions that they are likely to have. Although that document is available online for anyone who wants additional details. We know that this is an evolving situation and we're continuing to monitor it in partnership with our local health experts. And if there are any changes to the safety protocols, including any directives from the board tonight, we will update that video so that it reflects those changes appropriately before we share it on social media or on our webpage or in emails with our families.
That is very important.
It's the start of another school year here in Lake County, and we are looking forward to great academic gains and accomplishments. But with the number of COVID cases rising again, we know there are safety concerns in our community. We share these concerns and have developed a plan to lessen the risk of transmission in our schools. In accordance with guidance we've been given from the Florida Department of Education and as required by Governor DeSantis' recently signed executive order, masks are optional this year. However, at the urging of state and local health experts, we encourage all students and staff to wear masks indoors, especially in groups and on buses where social distancing may be difficult. But the choice to wear a mask or not is up to parents and guardians for students and individual employees for themselves. That's a step you can take for health and safety. Here's what we are doing to support health and safety as well. We have made extensive efforts to get eligible students and all staff vaccinated. We will continue to encourage vaccinations and will work with the Lake County Health Department to provide helpful information to those who want this level of protection. Currently, you can find a list of vaccination locations on the district website on our Back to School page. This summer, we upgraded the air filtration systems in every school. This project will be completed this month. This is one of the top strategies for mitigating the spread of the virus. Cleaning protocols have been increased, including replacing air filters and cooling coils as required by the manufacturer, unless circumstances dictate that we replace them sooner. We are thoroughly disinfecting school buses daily and cleaning high-touch areas between each route. We are also opening bus windows to allow for greater ventilation. And we are actively recruiting more bus drivers to allow for additional bus routes so we can reduce the number of students on each bus. We are cleaning classrooms daily, but also doing a deep disinfecting process on high-touch surfaces regularly. This includes door handles, sink handles, desktops, and other frequently touched areas. We will conduct temperature checks on any student who comes to school exhibiting symptoms of COVID-19. If the school nurse determines others may be at risk, symptomatic students will be removed from other students until a parent or guardian arrives. We are monitoring transitions in our hallways to ensure directional flow and social distancing when possible, and to discourage group gatherings. We will follow the health department's quarantine guidance, which this year allows more leniency for students and employees who show no symptoms of illness. Still, we are asking teachers to consistently upload class assignments to Google Classroom so students have access and can keep up with their work, even if they have to do it temporarily from home. We will limit the use of water fountains for the purpose of filling water bottles only. Drinking directly from the fountains will be discouraged. And we will frequently remind students about the importance of good hygiene, making sure that hand sanitizer, soap and water, and disinfectant wipes, where needed, are readily available. These are just a few of the safety protocols we have in place for this school year. You can see the full list on our website under the Back to School tab in the center of the page. We will continue our partnership with the health department as they monitor positivity rates in our community, and we will make adjustments as needed. Have questions? Contact us at questions@k12.fl.us. We are happy to clarify or help in any other way that we can. Working together, parents, teachers, administrators, and community partners, we can make this a great year in spite of COVID. Thank you so much for your support. Now let's have a healthy, safe, and successful school year.
Okay. We're now at public input, so we'll ask Miss Christine Palmer to come forward. Ms. Palmer, if you'll give your name, address, and then you'll have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Put my timer here so I don't lose track of time myself. My name is Christine Palmer. I'm at 189 P.O. Box at Groveland, Florida. I'm gonna, if you don't mind, I give you a copy of these, please. Okay, as you guys know, or a lot of you know, that I was last year's District Teacher of the Year. And in doing that, I had the opportunity to serve representing the district at the state level. I participated in a year-long intensive professional development, the name of which was called Coaching Through the Lens of Equity. At that point, I graduated in July, and so because I am now an alumni, I get to participate in a roundtable with Commissioner Cochran, Chancellor, Deputy Chancellor, all the big wigs, right? So I just kind of wanted to give you a report of my experience there on July 21st and the 22nd so that we could have open communication. I do want to say that this PD that I went through that was put on by the Department of Education really emphasized equity. And when I say equity, I mean that all students are doing the work that the teacher is calling on and insisting that all students are doing the work, not just the high ones in a collaborative group, etc. Making sure that we have high expectations for our ESC students and every other subgroup. And in doing that, we need to also make sure we have highly qualified teachers and that each student has access to a highly qualified teacher. So the goal statewide, as you guys well know, is that every single student can walk into any classroom and it would be a spectacular, a wonderful experience, a learning adventure. Now at the round table, the commissioner showed us some data, and excuse me for the poor picture, but I took a picture of the PowerPoint. But that data, I do kind of want to just go over because I do feel that there perhaps is some misinformation as far as what equity means, right? So this was by our commissioner that cited this data, and then the next day the chancellor showed this PowerPoint. And it says here, they are really focusing on early literacy. In third grade, if a person does not pass the third grade, they are 4 times more likely not to graduate. African American and Hispanic students not reading proficiently in third grade are 6 times more likely, okay? And then we have low-income minority students not reading proficiently in third grade are 8 times more likely to not graduate high school. This was data given to me by the commissioner as well as the chancellor, okay? So what do? So we had roundtables about what that looks like. Their answer to that was the best standards. I have so much to say. Their answer to that was the best standards, and their answer to that was incorporating social studies into the ELA curriculum and making sure that students can connect with that curriculum. Very important. So I will follow up because I have a lot more to say. They did talk about Tammy Durkins, and I wanted to give her, I might come back next time to give that little minute, okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you. Michaelina, Miller? Something Miller? Second Miller? Oh, so we have both of y'all. Okay, great. Okay. If y'all can give your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes, not 6, 3 minutes.
My name is McLeana Croner Miller at 3653 Evans Road, and my name's Rosalie Miller. Good evening, board members. This is McLeana Rosalie, me and my sister. So we wanted to talk about the dress code in our schools. Every girl in our public school system has at least one thing in common. Most girls pick an outfit for like 30 minutes or even more, and then to get dress coded when we get to school. Even if we are standing next to our fellow classmates that are male, they might be sagging or wearing ripped jeans with holes in them showing their upper thighs or underwear. We still are the ones to get dress coded for not having shorts long enough, showing our shoulders, or having holes in our jeans. Only because the boys are quote unquote distracted, or at least that's what the school says. Living in Lake County, it's not easy to wear jeans and hoodies in 100-degree weather. Me and my sister have gone to many stores like Old Navy, Target, Walmart, JCPenney, and TJ Maxx to try and find shorts that are appropriate for school, and found none. To reference this horrible dress code is, toward the end of our school year, me and my sister, as soon as we walked into the school doors, were dress coded for our leggings that our shirt covered, and we had hoodies just in case. We were in the office for around 45 minutes because it was too revealing. It was very uncomfortable when the school sent a male figure to look at our revealing leggings. And the fact is, it's because of the boys. Parents need to teach their sons how to not look at us like objects. And girls are normally harassed by boys no matter what we wear. It happened to me, and when I even was wearing sweatpants. What we wear does not change the way boys look at us.
It's unfair that girls should be punished for a boy's doing. Schools depend on us to use our own money to buy shorts that are not revealing and past our fingertips. Well, we are usually unable to be provided with that. It's also unfair to girls who have long legs and arms who struggle to find something to fit, let alone go by the dress code. Many girls have to sit in the office to get clothes from their parent or guardian. As they're in the office, other kids are being taught, well, they should be taught as well. Because we base learning off of dress code that is mostly pressed on girls. We miss out on lesson after lesson just because of what we wear. As we miss lessons, our grades drop, and just because leggings were too revealing, or my shorts didn't go past my fingertips. So boys don't know how to act, and we have to miss out on our education. I still can't understand why it is how it is. We did nothing wrong, but we still seem to be punished. I believe most girls would agree if I would ask me, please revisit the dress code to get to today's times, and males and females should be held equally accountable.
Very good. Thank y'all for coming before us. Thank you. Kim Cronin.
While she's coming, if I could just make a comment about that. So thank you, girls, for coming tonight. You're very brave. We're starting something new for this coming year. I'm working with a student at Leesburg High School to form a student advisory committee. We attempted to do that previously, and it was hard because of after-school activities and whatnot for kids to be able to stay committed to that. But I have a group from each of our high schools that's talking about being very committed to this for the coming year. And so y'all know Denko Bryant and know how persistent he is. He is actually getting representation for all of the high schools, so we'll be starting that soon. And this is one of the things that they wanted us to look at. So we are going to have a group of students that are going to look at that. And so thank you again for coming, and just know that we hear you.
So they consider that 6-12, not just high school?
They're going to be looking at probably all of that. I'm sure that many of the issues that they'll bring up will transcend all of our schools.
Cool.
Well, I guess to that point, as you mentioned, all of our schools, that's an interesting angle, because I know that some schools in their SACs have adopted a more strict dress code than what we as a board have approved. And I think that's where sometimes some of this gets a little challenging, when one school may permit or not permit leggings that another high school would, with the appropriate coverings, that thing sorts. I guess that's another thing to throw on this.
So we're going to put all that on
So look at
one of their first items that they might want to talk about, because that and your other one, which was cafeteria food, has already come up. So
Oh,
we're
yes.
we're working
Better
on
school
it.
lunches for all.
School lunches, yeah. Thank you
Okay.
for Ms. Cronin, sorry.
Mrs. Cronin.
Good evening,
Thank you.
board members, Superintendent. I wanted to just come up here tonight and talk with you a little bit. Our governor was very proud to make a public announcement several months back that he was going to reward teachers, classroom teachers and principals with a $1,000 bonus for working through the pandemic. And I just want you to know that your staff, your support staff, felt very bad about that. We have all these forgotten faces that work in this district, that our food service workers were out while everything else was closed down and they were feeding our students. Our bus drivers probably had the closest contact with these students. Our custodians was cleaning up after COVID. So I want to thank you that you agreed with us that all of our employees are important and they all deserve to be treated the same way. So I want to thank you. One other thing I wanted to bring up though also is our masks. I really think that, we follow the CDC guidelines, and I do believe that the CDC says that students and staff and visitors should be wearing masks indoors. I know some other counties did a mask mandate and put out there that they could, parents could sign an opt-out on that. But, I think that you've done a great job trying to vaccinate workers and students. But you think about our elementary students, none of our elementary students are old enough to be vaccinated. And right now we have a lot of young kids being sick from COVID. So I just hope that if things continue to develop the way they are, that we look into more of a mask mandate. Thank you.
Thank you, Kim. Tamara Russell? Mrs. Russell, if you give your name and address for the record, and you have 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Tamara Russell. I live in Groveland, and I'm a National Board Certified Teacher at Groveland Elementary School. I have to admit that I'm frustrated. I've been in this district for 16 years, and I've taught 24 in all. Each year I've been here, regardless of the board, promises have been made, and promises have been broken. This board has chosen silence on what matters while prioritizing and currying favor with community members who would publicly slander teachers before this body and on social media. You lack the courage of your convictions, and it's impacting your teacher corps as I speak. Teachers are concerned about safety. If the protocols are more loose now than they were last year when the positivity rate was much lower, how can you guarantee that teachers will be safe? You cannot. No one really knows who's going to pay for the absences related to COVID because the communication has been unclear. After everything that teachers went through last year, some that could not return this year will not be getting the $1,000 bonus. What are you going to do to find the funds to thank teachers for all of the extra things we did last year? Veteran teachers have been asked to step up in all kinds of ways through this time, and in spite of the fact that salary compression leaves us with literally pennies more than our first and second year counterparts. If the state is shortchanging us as a district, sue them. Get the teachers the compensation that they need. I know teachers who have their children on Florida Kid Care just to try to save money on insurance. Is this a thank you? Is this making our district better? How long do we have to wait? Which brings me to equity work. You made commitments to learn, you made commitments to grow, you invited teachers to learn, you purchased books and curriculum that could support in this effort, and you had a whole website devoted to sharing with the educational community the things that we were doing. It wasn't imperfect work, but it was ours. For the first time as a member of this teaching community, I felt that we would finally start having the conversations that it would take to move all of Lake County schools' kids. And overnight, just like that, it was like it never happened at all. You're more worried about making members of the community happy with that would disparage the teaching community in Lake than protecting your investments and keeping your promises. You're worried about the CRT you see on the news. I'm worried about the fact that I CRT. Can't really trust anything you promise.
Thank you. Mr. Vail? Name, address, and then you have 3 minutes.
Tom Vale. I live at 7322 McGill Road in Groveland. I imagine most people here aren't going to agree with what I have to say, and this is my personal opinion. It's not endorsed by anybody else I'm associated with. This is my personal opinion, based on what I've seen and what I understand. There is no pandemic. There never was a pandemic. It was a big lie. There was an epidemic. But it was an epidemic of fear, and the fear still lingers. If there were a pandemic, hospitals would have been overwhelmed, like they warned us about. But that never happened. If there were a pandemic, funeral homes would have been overwhelmed, but they weren't. When I think of pandemic, I think of deaths. Not a lot of disease, not a lot of intense respiratory disease. My idea of a pandemic is it causes more deaths than normal. COVID-19 barely did that, like a bad flu season. CDC statistics prove that. If you look at bad flu seasons, this one wasn't much different. CDC statistics show approximately 50,000 deaths per year for the past 5 years. Most of 2020 was about the same. For the past several decades, heart disease was the #1 cause of death. 2020 was basically the same. You might guess I'm not a scientist or a doctor, and you'd be right. But I have enough common sense to observe what is happening around me and determine that somebody is lying about what's happening. People have died. Many of those deaths are attributed to COVID-19. But there's also incentives for calling it COVID-19, but it's not. The deaths, that is. The average age of reported deaths from COVID-19 is something like 86. The average lifespan in the U.S. is 78. So if you die from COVID-19, if you have COVID-19, you live longer. I know that makes no sense. That's not what it means. But it should make people stop and think how deadly this disease really is. And not that it doesn't make people sick. I have friends that are sick right now. Very sick. Can't get out of bed. But I've also had friends that have been tested positive for COVID that are in bed for 2 or 3 days and then back to normal. Most of the victims who suffered and died from COVID-19 had other known conditions called comorbidities, including heart disease. Is that my timer?
Yes, go ahead, just wrap up your thought.
I got some more stuff here, but you got the idea.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bell. Okay, moving on to reports. We have the Education Foundation. Mrs. Collins-Batts.
Was that my timer, Mr. Mathias?
Yes, it is.
Chairman, School Board, Superintendent. Apple Mart is going to be open for our teachers on August the 18th for our new teachers, and then August the 25th for all teachers. We were able to get back 15 of our volunteers to operate the stores this year, so we're really excited about that. And we have sent passes out to all the principals. Red for Ed collected 4,326 pounds of supplies and $13,250, and it is still coming in. Friday, we will be sorting through the supplies and sending them out to the stores. 3,000 backpacks valued at $126,000 have been distributed to the elementary schools. That was in partnership with the Salvation Army. And we have ordered 2,000 fillable water bottles for distribution to solve the issue with using the water fountains. The county-wide robotics scrimmage has been scheduled for October 2nd at Tavares Middle School. At this point, pending on CDC and school board regulations, we are allowing 32 teams, and Sinningers Irrigation and Seco are the presenting sponsors. There is no admission charge for the teams. Stepping Out for Education has a new Mirabelle winner, Dr. Emily Feltner, and the mayor of Claremont earned the top male while Dr. Feltner was the top female. The event was attended by 494 patrons, and at first pass We are netting $42,000, which will be matched at 100% by the state for a total of $84,000. And this is earmarked for the IB program at Tavares High School and our CTE programs. And we were able at the event to highlight 4 of our high school culinary departments. And we had backup dancers from South Lake High School and Lake Minneola High School. The Take Stock in Children's Spelling Bee will be held September 2nd at the Venetian Center. In abundance of caution, we have cut off the number of teams to 15, and there will not be more than 100 people in the room, which holds 450 people. Bank America and Public Supermarket Charities are the presenting sponsors. Scott Strong Golf Tournament will be held October 15th at Mission Inn, and the Hans and Kay Jacobson Foundation came in at a $15,000 presenting sponsor for that event. The Lady of the Lakes Renaissance Fair is scheduled for November 5th, 6th, 7th, 13th, and 14th. Education Day is currently scheduled November 5th. We are watching the district protocols. We understand that field trips are not allowed in the first quarter. If field trips aren't allowed in the second quarter, we will be canceling the Education Day portion of that. And our next board meeting is August the 25th at noon. Are there any questions?
The water bottles will be here?
The water bottles will be here the last week in August, and we'll get them out immediately.
Okay, thanks. Thank you very much. Yeah, very kind. Okay, Superintendent, new business?
We have no new business.
Oh, wait, that's just ask Mr. Johnson.
That's right. I have nothing to report.
Okay. Now then, Superintendent.
Oh, so we're on the consent agenda, so I'm
Correct.
recommending approval of consent agenda items 8.01 to 10.04.
You've heard the superintendent's recommendation. Do I have a second? Second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 5-0. Okay. We're now into discussion.
Yes, sir. The next item before the board is final approval of revisions to policy 5610, suspensions, alternative disciplinary placement, and expulsion of students. If there's anyone here this evening that wishes to speak to this particular policy, please come forward to the podium at this time. I don't see anyone coming forward, Mr. Chairman. I believe it appropriate to close the public hearing.
Superintendent, do you have a recommendation?
Recommend final approval of policy 5610, suspensions, alternative disciplinary placements, and expulsion of students.
You've heard the superintendent's recommendation.
So moved.
Have a second? Any discussion?
Second.
Thank you. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 5-0. Okay, 11.02.
Yes, sir. The next item is final approval of revisions to policy 5772, weapons and firearms. If there's anyone here that wishes to speak to this particular policy change, please come forward to the podium at this time.
Stephen Tibbetts, 412 Maple Tree Drive, Altoona, Florida. Mr. Chairman, school board members, Superintendent Cornick. Just want to quickly talk to you this evening, about your obligation. All too often I've sat here and heard complaints about what the politicians make you have to do. Tonight, the politicians, in their infinite wisdom, decided to change Florida Statute 790001 and 790.115. The net effect of that is, instead of banning blades, box cutters, common penknives with blades measuring 4 or more inches, swords, sword canes, billies, electric weapons, devices, and destructive devices. I would ask you as a board, do you want those things in your school? Just because the legislature has decided to take it out of a statute does not excuse you from your obligation, keeping our kids safe. You need to take a look at this, and I'm sorry I didn't see it before tonight, its final reading, but I would simply be embarrassed for you to read tomorrow in the paper that you chose not to keep these items out of our schools. And one little aside, as we talk about the politicians and the politics, I couldn't help but be amazed this week at our astute governor who is going to provide scholarships for any student who chooses not to wear a mask and is bullied. But he's not doing a damn thing for any student who is wearing a mask and is bullied. We've got a difficult situation out there. So God bless you all for trying to sort it all out. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Dr. Tibbetts. Okay.
Is there anyone else who wishes to speak to this particular policy change? I don't see anyone else coming forward, Mr. Chairman, and believe it appropriate to close the public hearing.
Superintendent, you have a recommendation?
I recommend final approval of policy 5772, weapons and firearms.
You've heard the superintendent's recommendation. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second for discussion.
Of course. I just need a second
So,
first.
so I'm
Okay.
sure the question is on everybody's mind.
Okay, so we got a
Yes.
second.
There she is.
Now,
Yes, I
now
knew
we'll-
she was here and I told her to get ready, so,
now we will open up for discussion. You can come forward.
so I think you heard the concern, and so.
Well, it was just funny because I was out in the lobby talking to the deputies as well, and they were like, what? So, just to clarify, this, the policy has been changed to align to statute 790-001, because that is what Cessor has put in their definition, which is the policy for weapons. 790-115, what Mr. Tibbetts talked about, is a different statute. We had married the two together, but the 790-115, those are not classified as weapons and zero tolerance. So we just cleaned up the policy to align to statute. Those things are still prohibited. They're just falling under the classification and not weapons. That's the difference, that's all. We had muddied them up and then we separated them out. So those things are still prohibited, they just don't fall under weapons. And this was reviewed by Neola as well.
And there are consequences for students?
Oh, absolutely. Those items are in the code of conduct.
So if we separate them out, I guess the question is, where are those? It's just exclusively in the code of conduct, or is there a school board policy that also?
They're in the code of conduct, they're just not in the weapons section, yes.
Are
I
they,
can pull them up for you.
they're not, like Cessor is, can you explain for people? We
Yes.
get confused.
Cessor is the state reporting process, is where they send us the definitions, and last year they did not tell us which statute that we were to consider weapons. So everything was considered a weapon because they took the statute out, but then we all came back and said, but this is the statute for weapons, which is 790-001, so they put that back in. 790-115 describes prohibited items, not weapons. We had put the two together a few years ago when we redid the policies with Neola, but in consultation with Neola and Elizabeth Turner, we looked and saw, okay, 790-115 are prohibited items, but not those items that are classified as zero tolerance in weapons. But they are prohibited in schools, and they will face disciplinary consequences for those.
So
Explain it.
So should there be a matching school board policy that goes along with supporting the code of conduct, or is the code of conduct just really
thought it
standing
was a
alone?
policy.
There is a policy,
which one is that?
so 5772 is the weapons policy. I think that's the one we have tonight, 5772, I think is the one that's up for
Yes.
tonight, right? I get
Yes.
them mixed up sometimes. So that is our weapons policy. And then when you look in the code of conduct that was just approved a few weeks ago, those items should match that statute that's in 790-001. We actually listed those out in the Code of Conduct, so when people just see a statute, well, what is that? We actually listed out the items in that statute.
Okay, I think I might have not made my question clear. I'm referring to the prohibited items in 115.
I have to look, those are in the Code of Conduct as well. Dangerous instruments.
Right,
Some
so
are
is there a matching core, school board policy? to support the code of
5500
conduct?
is your student conduct policy, and it talks about that the board was established, I don't know the words right now, so don't hold me to it, but 5500 is your student conduct policy. So it talks about what your ability as a board is to establish what things are to be prohibited, what's a violation of policy. So it gives you that broad scope to list out things, and that's why we use the Code of Conduct to lay those items out. There is no policy for dangerous instruments because that is a local code. So some of those items falls in dangerous instrument, but destructive devices falls under another policy, and I have to, another assessor definition, and I'd have to look that up.
So I certainly understand that we as a local board can have a list of prohibited items, but and that would be the local code. But is this 115 not a state statute? So,
It is a statute for prohibited items.
For prohibited, so
Yes.
why would we not have a school board policy to support that particular statute?
Well, I'd have to talk to Neola about that one, because what Neola says is when they list the statutes in our policies, they're covered in that statute. So if you look in 5500, I believe it's 5500, that's student conduct, there should be a listing of all the statutes that that policy supports. At the top, if you look at the very top, when you look in board docs, they have like all the statutes listed out, and I believe it's 5500, and I think 790-115 should be at the top of that policy.
So, Ms. Banks, if I may ask a question for clarification. An example of this would be if a student had a pencil and attacked another student. We don't ordinarily consider a pencil a weapon. However, in that case, it was a dangerous instrument because another individual was harmed. So we would an administrator would code it that way, and the student would be given consequences.
Yes, ma'am.
And we would be in line with both the student code of conduct as well as the statute.
As well as the policy, yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
So 5500, the statutory references at the top don't include this 115.
They don't, I'd have to look, because it is included and I checked. I'd have to look, if it's not student conduct, I'd have to look, and I can come back with that.
Okay, well, so I guess for me, at least it makes sense to go ahead and approve this one policy tonight, because that should, be the weapons and firearms according to that particular statute. But I would like to come back and just, I guess, get the peace of mind that we've got a code of conduct that also has a supporting school board policy for these other prohibited items.
Right, and is there, and like I said, maybe 5500 is not the one, I'd have to go and look, but I knew it when I was sitting there for the workshop. I had it all there, Mr. Dodd. So right now, I was expecting to have to pull up 5500 out of my head, or the other policies that it talks about. But we did work through it with Elizabeth to make sure that it was covered, and I also reached out to Neola. And that's how I knew that part, because that's what their position is. We don't lay everything out. We reference them all at the top, and that is referring back to the statute. But your code would actually line out what items that we are referring to. But those items are still prohibited, and they're punishable by removal for not just a short-term removal, but long-term removals as well. It's not just zero tolerance for all of them, but there are removals attached to those. So.
Very good. Any other comments or questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments or questions from the board? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? 5-0. Okay. Superintendent, 11.03.
So I mentioned to you at the workshop where we went over the safety protocols that this is still kind of a work in progress. It was about 5:30 this afternoon. We received an updated decision tree. If you remember, that was a document that the DOE provided us last year that defined who quarantines for how long, and it was a listing of those. You don't have a copy of that because we just got it right before and it was in a document that I could not print. And so I'm going to be updating the decision tree, but and I said that any changes to the protocols we would need to bring back to you. And so on Friday, there was an emergency order that was issued by the Department of Health that was forwarded to you by Mr. Johnson. And in that document, it did define those guidelines and make some changes to the quarantines, contact tracing, and some of those things that are included in the safety protocols. Therefore, the document is back before you with those changes, which will include that decision tree tomorrow before we post this on any of our websites. We do have that back to school link that the video referenced. We will be capturing all of these documents and get those up just as soon as they're all completed, because we're still getting some last minute information, including what we received on Friday. So that information is contained within, and tonight it says final approval, but it's actually approval of the protocols so that we can finalize those, make those available, and make sure that all parents and our staff are aware of the protocols and that they're adhering to them in accordance to what we've adopted tonight. So with that said, I am recommending approval of the safety protocols for the reopening of schools.
You've heard the superintendent's recommendation. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
A second?
Second.
Second? Okay.
Can we discuss?
Wait, if you'll wait. Now we're gonna open for discussion. And I bet Dr. Burns wants to discuss.
I know that this board wants the best for kids. I know you all do. And I know sometimes we disagree, and I think we all get there. 2 weeks ago, I brought you guys a warning that I felt like the Delta wave was gonna become a problem. I think we've seen that it has. We talked again last Monday, and I felt like you guys felt like your hands were tied. And now the health department has agreed that this is an emergency, the Florida Department of Health, and in their emergency document, they actually do list the same policy that I suggested, which was the mandate for masking with an opt-out for parental rights. It's perfectly legal, and now we have multiple counties, including Orange County is doing it, Seminole County. I feel like it's a day before school. I feel like we're in an emergency, and this is getting worse. There are tens of thousands of Florida children that have COVID. Hundreds are hospitalized around the state, and another kid just died at Nemours, and we haven't opened schools yet. When we have children sitting next to each other in groups of 25, 40 for specials, or 100 for PE or whatever activity, I'm very concerned that this is going to spread like chickenpox. And I did call Epi this week and asked, I said, am I overreacting? Epi is the Emerging Pathogens Institute, and I've been in contact for over a year now with the dean of that institute, and he said, absolutely not, this is a nightmare. So things are definitely a little worse in Alachua, I would say, but they're not good here. The only real protections we have against aerosol viruses is ventilation and masking. We've done what we could with ventilation, but it's not, it's really meant for lower levels of virus. If there's a lot of virus in the air, it's not what it's meant for. We know that masks work, and they work better in groups. Every kid that wears a mask protects other children around them as well as themselves. We have the science, it's there. We helped prove that masks worked last year. I think we need to ask our parents to agree to a masking mandate so that, and those who do feel strongly can still have that parental right to opt out. I tried to always support parental rights. I was able to figure out that only 1 out of 4 of our kids 12 to 17 are vaccinated, and we know that none under 12 are. And speaking as a mom and speaking for a lot of other parents that have contacted me this week, I'm scared to put my kids in school tomorrow. Like, it frightens me, and it would frighten me less if there were, if there were a mask mandate, but I understand that, like, parents really feel very strongly, and so I feel like a fair compromise would be to allow parental opt-out. I do think it would be a stronger policy, much like every other policy where we have an opt-out. Like, the general consensus when you have a policy is people tend to follow it, and then if you provide an opt-out, you'll have those who feel very strongly opt out, much like opt-out when I did opt-out with testing, or any other sexual education, any of those opt-out programs. But the vast majority will then take it, which increases the safety factor for those students whose parents are on the fence, maybe might even just ask a teacher, what's your preference? Well, let's let them know what the preference is. Safety in this board has always been the #1 priority, and it is our job to do this. We have to protect the health and welfare of our children. I am asking you guys to consider a mask mandate with parental opt-out. I think we should have a mask mandate for school employees. I would love to avoid maybe the vaccinated ones, but we can't. I think it'd be reasonable to include some sort of time factor where we come and reconsider this. I have from EPI, that same group, I do have projected models. The EPI group modeled it. I only have a few.
Once again.
We'll share it. Okay. And my printer wasn't printed, it was very slow. And it does show that they think, and obviously models are models, but they think that this may be over relatively quickly. So if we could do a 30-day thing or 6 weeks, maybe we'll be done. So.
May I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Did they recommend a time?
He
Did
said
they
end of
say 6?
September, is what he told me. What they're doing in Alachua, and they aren't allowing parental opt-out. In Alachua, they're doing 2 weeks, and then they're gonna revisit in 2 weeks without an they're doing medical or psychological opt-out with 2 weeks. The last thing I just wanted to say was Atlanta schools open today, or open this week, and I've been tracking them because they're allowing optional masks in certain counties and not in others. And just today, their numbers came out, and those districts that did choose to mandate masks, obviously we would have to do an opt-out, but those that chose, they had 2.5 times less cases. So that's pretty significant. And I would say, I just want to remind you, we're not dealing with the same animal. This Delta is different, and we don't know how it's gonna react, but we know masks are a way to protect kids. So with that, I would ask you guys to consider. I could make a motion, if you want to.
Let's have some more discussion first.
That's
and then
fine.
We can, unless you want to. But I think that for me, there's no difference than having mask optional and protecting the parents' rights than having this parent have to opt out. I mean, if you want to wear a mask and you're passionate about it, I encourage, the district has encouraged our employees, our kids to wear a mask. We've also said that we'll protect any kids from, there was a comment about being bullied, if you're wearing a mask or not wearing a mask, those kids and staff members will be protected. But this is a parental choice. And in essence, giving, with your program of mandating it with a parental opt-out, is the same as giving parents the right to wear a mask or not wear a mask. It's the same thing to me. I don't understand it. And we spoke about our kids, and last year, outside, they didn't wear masks when they were at the playground. They were able to take their mask off. And I know this board, and under your leadership, Dr. Burns, we've monitored this COVID. No one could have been more nervous than, I think, us at opening schools and how safe our kids would be. And so I watched it every single day. I also, when we lifted it and made masks optional, I watched the report every day from our summer programs. And we saw no dramatic spikes. We had a couple blue bleeps where if you dig in, kids went to a camp and then came back, and they called it at the camp and then came back to summer school. Those were blips on the radar compared to we didn't see any great spikes in COVID cases. I think that we're on the right track with encouraging vaccinations, encouraging wearing masks. It does help. So I'm not like a no masker, and I got the vaccine. So, and I think that this board has proven that we're going to do the right thing to protect our kids and our teachers. Last year, especially, I think we proved it. And if things changed, I know that we would pivot, and that's where I land. I think that we're good.
And I had a question in regards to, if, let's say you did an opt-out, a mandatory mask and then an opt-out, and I'm in my classroom and I have a child that didn't bring in their opt-out form, and so then I'm going to require them to put a mask on. What is my liability now that I've required them to put a mask on? And I fear that I'm not willing to put a teacher being liable for making a child wear a mask. So when that kid goes home and tells their mom or dad, Mrs. Luke made me put a mask on today, I don't know what that's going to look like. And I'm not willing to put our teachers in a position where they're monitoring to the point of mandatory. So I described last week a situation where And I truly believe that the times we are in, you should be very sensitive right now to your families and what their needs are and what their opinions are in the matter. So I should know the students in my classroom, and I should be aware of which ones want to wear masks and which ones don't. But once we mandate that, then who's liable for that? I was talking to my sister, who's very much concerned, similar to you are, about her children being protected by masks, and we were speaking about the young lady at the ice cream counter, where there were signs that said, "We don't care if you're vaccinated, we want you to wear masks," and nobody was wearing masks. And is that young lady that's serving ice cream now liable? Is she going to lose her job because she didn't require anyone in the business to wear masks? So we wrapped our heads around that, and I don't know what that looks like. I don't even know if there's a legal opinion about
I
that.
don't think there's any liability with regards to.
I would
COVID.
beg to, I mean, we've seen news stories about businesses being liable for that, and I am worried about putting our teachers in the middle of what is a very divisive conversation, and now we're putting them between families and
So I guess,
desires.
I guess the one thing I would say would be if that parent felt very strongly, because, and Orange County just said, if, you know what, you could write a note and that's it. If that parent felt very strongly, maybe they should have written a note, or they should write a note, and if not, we're helping their kid not catch a
Yeah, but Dr. Burns,
dangerous disease.
you know as well as I do that this conversation becomes very, very divisive very quickly, and people aren't reasonable all the time.
Sure.
I mean, on both sides of the spectrum.
Which is why I think we need some standards.
Right, well, and
Well-
we've tried to set the standards, is what I'm hearing. So, and I will tell you, I called the health department today too, because I knew this conversation was coming up when I saw the agenda change, the addition to the agenda. And I was shocked to hear that you know the number of cases of children, because I specifically asked, are we seeing a rise in children being hospitalized? And they said they would not share that information with me,
Yeah,
which
you
was
can
interesting.
figure it out from the CDC data if you work on
Dig into
the
it a little
math,
bit more.
if you dig into the
So I
CDC.
asked them, would it be fair
Yes,
to
but they're being very evasive on
Mhm.
purpose, and it is very disappointing.
Well, and I asked if we could logically, especially scientifically thinking, could we equate the success that the schools have had this summer in our summer programs and last school year on the uses of masks? He's like, no, we had so many things in place last year to keep our children safe that you cannot say that masks or no masks had something to do with getting COVID or not getting COVID, because we have so many different variants in places. And so when everything is so unknown, and we talked about the experts, like you said, you called this person who's the dean of the epidemiologist. I could call somebody else that was the dean of epidemiologists, and they would tell us something completely different. I feel like we're in the same place we were last summer when we sat here and talked about assembling a panel of experts to tell us what to do. You can find a panel of experts to give us direction that would be completely different from each other, and that's really the predicament that I feel that we're in.
And the biggest challenge we have, and again, I go back to Dr. Carriosa that I reached out to, who was a professor at UCF, and he predicted to the T where we are today.
Mhm.
And I reached out to him, and he said to me, based on the protocols, he had them, he would not recommend masks. He also didn't recommend masks, being fair, for our young kids in the very beginning.
Right.
And when someone cites there's an expert, he's a person I trust.
Right.
Because you're absolutely right, Mrs. Lou, that you can go on and you will get different opinions across the board. And part of the reason is that this virus has not been, this COVID-19 has not been studied enough. My son went for 4 years, and he was part of research on cancer. And in the 5th year, they finally came out with the study. You can't come up with something, and we so want to know. They throw these tests out, and they throw these results out, and we grab them, and yet they've not been validated, or there hasn't been enough test cases. So that I think that we're on the right path with where we are today, based on the one expert that I have a chance to talk to, who so far I trust, and he's been right. And you have your people too. So we all have people.
Well, my people are your people, because the superintendent has met with them, and we've also met with the pediatricians at Epi, and I mean, of course, you can find any doc. There's always 4 out of 5 dentists. And you can always find that 5th. I certainly don't doubt that.
Well, they're all over the board, though, to Mrs. Luke's point.
And
So-
I think there's something else we have to consider here. And let me just put it out there. I'm very afraid for children to go to school. I'm a grandmother. I have an elementary grandson. And of course, I want him to be safe. And he will, because his mother's fanatical, he will be wearing a mask. But the other thing that I have to bring up is, we say quite simply, have the parents send a note. but how are we managing these notes? I mean, who are they sending it to?
Oh, I thought about that. We could put it on Google Docs.
Okay. And I'm not fighting you one way or the other. I'm just saying, I think that when we start talking about implementing something like that, we really have to think about it thoroughly and make sure that it's a process that we can manage. Because little kids don't always take notes to the teacher. So what is the liability if I write a note for my child and the teacher never sees it? And I go to school for a conference and my child is sitting there and he has no mask on. Am I gonna demand that the school is responsible because I sent a note? As far as Google Docs, or I understand we can put it in Skyward, just like we allow parents to go in and check out other things, but how do we know that all these parents are gonna have access to the technology? Who in the school, whose job is it going to be to manage all of this? School does start tomorrow. And, I think that throws a loop for parents, teachers, everyone. So I think, while I agree with everything you say, I think it's something that we seriously have to consider, because I think whatever we do, there is a great number of people who feel differently. So we're gonna have people who are going to support it either way. To be perfectly honest with you, I absolutely agree that parents should make those decisions about what their children do. At the same time, if it's my child or my grandchild, I want them to have on a mask. But I think that family member needs to make that decision. And I think we need to be very careful about any kind of policy we make that we can't have work tomorrow morning, because school starts tomorrow.
Right, and I certainly reached out to the district every day last week. I couldn't move anything. I don't know how we could have done this sooner. I can't, schools tomorrow.
I just know it will be a great burden on parents even.
Right, but I will say, multiple school districts made the call Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and today.
They did.
So I just think I'm starting to feel like we're looking for excuses. But
Do you wanna make a motion?
Well, I think
Mark wants to.
We already did make a motion and we had a
No,
first.
no, she wanted.
Oh, go ahead, Mr. Brown.
I think for me is I'm having trouble wrapping my head around the logic, the standpoint of the two different sides of this. Okay, so because from a behavioral standpoint, if you have the optional mask with parents telling their children to wear masks, you have this scenario where you have children that are wearing masks and children that are not wearing masks in class together. And if you go the other way and create a policy that now you've got a mask mandate that people can opt out of, you have the same scenario where you still have children wearing masks and children not wearing masks. I think a policy's strength is when it applies to everybody. When we approved this firearms policy, for instance, a few minutes ago, it's because it applies to everybody. You can't opt out of it, right? So you don't end up with kids brandishing firearms and kids that don't, and that be perfectly okay. So I guess for me, I think the folks that are in great support of the masks, to them this mask mandate sounds good, it sounds appealing, but I don't know that we've thought that far enough through to say, but wait a second, that doesn't really do anything. That doesn't have any teeth because you don't have to actually follow the policy. So you just end up with all the kids intermingled. I guess if I'm thinking about this, if I guess I'm putting my shoes and put myself in the shoes of somebody who's passionate about their kids wearing a mask, then I would reach out to the teacher and I would say, hey, he's 6 or he's 7, he's 5, maybe he's gonna forget to wear it, or maybe he's a new kindergartner and most of the preschools didn't wear masks last year. I would kind of touch base with the teacher who knows the students and say, can you encourage to keep them on, have them keep the mask on? But I think when you get to middle school or high school, it just becomes a logistical nightmare when you've got 100 and some odd kids and it's spread over 6 or 7 different classes to figure out, okay, who in this period is supposed to be wearing the mask and who's not, and I think then you just spend all your time, for the same scenario. Because either way, you've got kids wearing masks and not wearing masks intermingled with each other. As I think about 12 hours from now, kids are going to be congregating on a high school campus. I just don't know how at this point to say.
Do you do it in 2 days?
But that doesn't avoid the problem where you still have kids wearing masks and not wearing masks together. No matter which way you go, you still have the same scenario where.
See, I would think knowing human behavior, you would have a lot, with an opt-out, you would have a lot less kids not wearing masks, because the parents have to actually care. And I don't think that there's a huge majority of people that care. I think there's a fair amount of people who would opt out, but I don't think
know.
it's
I think the
50-50.
majority of our parents care about their kids.
Like
I don't think they
100%.
care about masking that much. I think there's a lot of people out there who, if we say, look, wow, we're at a much higher COVID level than we have ever been with a brand new variant that is way more infective, and children all over the state are getting infected and hospitalized. This is an emergency and we should do something. And I guess I'm a little shocked.
But contrary, I mean, I don't see.
I know,
where that
which
data-
is,
I don't
but
see where that data
but
is.
yet
You're not
Orange
supporting
County
it with
figured
anything
it
that's-
out.
No,
Or,
time
well,
out.
fine,
Time
then
out.
let's do an actual mandate and have some intestinal fortitude.
Okay, never mind. We don't-
I
You
think
wanna
we're-
make, you wanna
I
make a
think,
motion?
well, there's a motion on the table
No,
with
no,
a
no,
first
she
and a
wanted to do
second.
it. She wanted to
May I
do it.
say one
Okay.
thing though before we do that? I certainly don't want the people in the audience or the people listening and watching at home to go away with the lasting impression that, and I know you didn't mean it that way, but I certainly would say that everyone sitting here does believe that people care about their children and whether or not they wear a mask. I think this is a very stressful time for everyone. And I think feelings run high on both sides. And I would certainly hope that everyone, all stakeholders would know that we're trying desperately to make decisions that we truly feel are fair to everybody and in the best interest of everyone. And I respect their caring and concern for their children. And I do believe that I agree with everything you said except that. I do believe that there are a lot of people who care, and I think those people will certainly let us know that. Because, you know, people care about their children. They love their children, and they want to know that they're safe as they can be.
Is there any interest in school employees, staff? They have had the option of being vaccinated. 1 out of 4 of our children above age 12 are vaccinated, and none of our children under age 12 are vaccinated. So my child does not have the parental choice or right to get shots to protect themselves. So I'm wondering if we care enough to have our staff at least wear masks. I'm a little shocked.
If they want to.
If
We're
they
saying
want to.
We have encouraged them to.
But this
What
is
we're
a
not gonna
health
do-
thing.
Because of your strong opinions, where do you think that when we say to our teachers, you are educated, you know the information, wear a mask, we're giving them the right. We don't have to tell everybody what to do. They're not children. We don't have to tell them. They're adults.
And if that were true, we wouldn't be in these situations. So that's just not true. But we can, I respect you, and you say we don't need to have an exit strategy, the 3x3x3 policy that we had last year.
I think we do, just like we did before, and this board collectively has responded when the need came. And when we went into the pandemic, we came together, we pivoted. Should something change, we come
But
together
it
and
just
do
did change, Bill.
It didn't change because the numbers you're saying aren't accurate, Christie, unfortunately. The numbers, while we have
That is
COVID,
not
my son's in
true.
hospitals every day now. And he said to me, Dad, the hospital's the Veterans Center, he's in Naples right now. No kids. These are people that are unvaccinated, 95%. The ones that are vaccinated had pre-existing conditions. That's what's in the hospitals. This thing ultimately has got to run its course. That you can't always put this bridge up. There has to be a herd immunity.
No, we will not get to herd immunity. This is a variant. Your source is
It's-
wrong and doesn't understand how
He's got 40
virology
years
works.
infectious disease.
And
You're a
that's
chemist.
wonderful.
So, there we go.
Who's worked with Detra on this stuff?
Okay.
So I
Mr.
guess,
Chairman, you
ultimately,
have
we
a
are
motion
we are
on
local
the
school
table.
Okay, we have a motion. We're kind of getting sideways on this. So
Can I make
we-
a motion that we
Well, we got one.
You have to amend.
consider
you
mask
have to-
mandate for
you
school
have to amend-
employees?
You have to make a motion to amend the motion. We have a motion already, first and
Okay.
seconded. So you're going to make a motion to amend the motion. Go ahead.
Can I make a motion to amend the motion to
Yes.
include school employees for a mask mandate?
Okay. Board members, you've heard the motion.
I'm sorry, maybe I'm a little slow tonight. Could you just tell us what the motion is now? Is it
The motion is that we accept what
correct? But the part about the employees,
The employee, I was recommending
No.
an employee mask.
that's separate.
she's doing this separately.
Okay.
So when she makes the motion,
Then you can.
Okay.
then
do that.
she'll need a
Okay.
second.
All right.
Okay, so go ahead. Did you make the motion?
Yes, I did. I said
Okay. Okay, board members, you've heard the motion. Do we have a second?
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to.
Wait. It dies.
Dies
Lack of a
quickly.
second.
Right.
Okay, go ahead.
All right, I'd like to make a motion to recommend masking children with a parental opt-out.
Board members, you've heard the motion. Do I have a second? Motion dies without a second. Okay? Now, we have the motion at hand. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Oppose.
Okay, 4-1. Okay? Superintendent's report.
Right, so just a couple of things. Ms. Cronin mentioned earlier about the $1,000 checks. So we got notice from the DOE that those went out to all those that were eligible to receive the funding from the state last week. So those are, I think, checks are in the mail. I know many of them have already received them. And we are working now to get the $1,000 checks out to everyone who was not eligible, as Ms. Cronin mentioned. And so those are coming out very soon. I don't have a timeline on that, but payroll is busily working on that. We've actually authorized a little overtime for those folks to get those checks in the mail as soon as possible. So those are coming. And at the urging of the board, staff has also been working on increasing substitute pay. I know that was a priority of yours. And so at the next meeting, you will see a plan brought to you to increase that pay. And on the 18th, the LCEA and SEIU are going to be meeting to discuss the COVID leave pay that Ms. Cronin also mentioned, the processes and procedures that we need to put in place to cover our folks with the leave. So that will be coming to you as well, hopefully at the next meeting, so we'll have those items before you. I did have a few letters of condolence that were sent that I wanted to mention. First of all, Jean Grady, who is a teacher at the Lake Hills, lost her husband, John Grady. Tara Underwood lost her husband, William Stephen, who's, Tara is a data entry operator in our ESE department and clerical assistant at Rhymes Early Learning Center. Sandra Cologne, who is a food service assistant at Gray Middle, lost her husband, Jerry Torres, and Tim Weldon, wife of Kim Weldon. We sent a letter of condolence to him and his family. He works as an electrician in our maintenance and operations department, so condolences to those families. And I just want to wish everyone a great start tomorrow. We know that this is an unprecedented time and that we're all very concerned, and our teachers are ready. We do have safety protocols in place. We will make sure that those are enforced, and we will continue to encourage people to wear masks, as we mentioned earlier. And just want to thank everybody for being ready for tomorrow, and we're going to hope and pray for a great school year. So thank you.
Okay. Board members, Mrs. Lee.
I just share the same sentiment the superintendent shared, that we're excited to have the students back and ready to go tomorrow morning bright and early. So thank you.
Mr. Dodd?
Yes, well, okay, so I spent the day with some rather wonderful excitement touring around Lake Point Academy. It was fantastic, but, you know, I mean, aside from the great building and wonderful facility that it is, that was debt-free, by the way. Compliments that pay as you go. The greatest asset in that building, the people, the teachers, the faculty, the staff, the custodians, the food service workers, everybody who was working together, because the energy level in that place was dynamic today. It was off the wall. They were very excited about welcoming children. They were very excited about the opportunities to collaborate as a group and put some wonderful instructional strategies in place. And it was just so refreshing to feel that kind of energy and excitement. I mean, imagine, you know, typical back to school August excitement, just, you know, take that to the next level. So that was wonderful. Along the lines of that school, though, you know, I guess I'm not sure where we finished or anticipating to finish budget-wise in the $33 million, but if there are some few dollars laying around, I still want to advocate for a shade structure over that playground. I was out there at 12:15 today. It was scorching. Stood there in the sun for just 3 minutes before the sweat starts dripping off of me. And I'm looking off, seeing the shade under the covered walkways over there, and I go, I know where the teachers are going to be standing when it's time for recess, but these kids, it's just not you know. So I guess in the grand scheme of $33 million, I'm hoping we can put some shade over that playground, because there will be many kids who will really appreciate that. So that's it. Good.
Friday, I had the privilege of going to open house for our other new school that's opening at the old Mascots old school site. I was very impressed. I want to do a particular shout out to Mr. Carr and some of the members of his staff. These are things that I learned from the principal and the other people as I was visiting in the school. Scott Stanzel, who is a longtime Lake County employee, they wanted me to make sure that people knew how well and how hard he had worked. Mr. Wango and Gary Rogers. These people, I am told, was there working late Sunday, putting chairs together and furniture, making sure that everything was ready so that when these students came for open house, they had what they needed. And in terms of asking for things, I would ask that we look hard to try and find some money for some signage for that building. One of the reasons I could find it is because I knew where it was. There wasn't really anything that told me that I was going in the right direction other than just memory from years past. I'd like to thank Mrs. Carmen again. She has come through. She's a real trooper when it comes to helping us provide things that we need for our students. Just last time we were here, we were discussing water bottles and the need to ensure that all students had those. And then tonight she announces that those are going to be ready for us. Also this weekend I had the privilege of attending a back to school bash at Mount Dora Middle School. This one was unique in that it was open to the entire county. So not only was our new Mount Dora Middle School principal present, but there were also principals from other middle schools to include Umatilla, Oak Park, Carver, Eustis Middle, and it was quite a nice affair. They were giving shots, and they also were doing a lot of other community activities for students, in addition to giving them backpacks and hygiene packs and masks, and it was a great affair. And I'd also like to shout out to our Teacher of the Year. We appreciate always you sharing with us. Please come back, and that's it, sir.
Good. Thank you. Dr. Burns?
I wish everybody the best of luck.
Okay. I'd like to recognize all the chambers that came out and did appreciations for our teachers. Seeing the post on Facebook, they were absolutely amazing. Our Teacher of the Year, you're more than welcome anytime to come back. I think a workshop would be amazing if you could come back and visit.
Could probably give her more than 3 minutes, right?
Yeah, you get 4 at a workshop. I'm looking forward to an amazing year. I know that you're upset, Dr. Burns, and I'm sorry for that, because I know where your spirit is, and know that this board, I think we've always done the right thing for our kids and for our employees, and we will continue to do that. I know we have a difference about this one, but we'll adjust if necessary. And with that said, meeting adjourned.